I encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity to engage with our panelists to see how the Belize model can work for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the honor to give the floor to the Honorable Dr. Omar Figueroa.
Thank you, Ambassador Young. Our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I want to thank you very much for your participation in today's side event, Belize's model for sustainable small-scale fisheries, a partnership success story. Notwithstanding our limited resources, Belize has pioneered a successful fisheries conservation and management approach that has sustained our small-scale fisheries and which I hope can be a model for other countries endeavoring to do the same. Credit to that success must be given to the people of Belize, who have demonstrated unwavering commitment to the protection and preservation of our natural resources. The government of Belize itself has provided the political imprimatur to that commitment, and our partners their continued support. Counted amongst our wealth of natural resources is the magnificent 190-mile-long barrier reef system, the largest barrier reef in the Western Hemisphere and second in the world. It forms the largest part of the Mesoamerican barrier reef system comprised of Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras. Hundreds of white sand coral islands, also called keys, covered with stands of mangrove trees, dot our coastline. This reef system, its resources and services, sustains the livelihood of numerous fishing communities along the coast. It provides jobs, social stability, and food security. Altogether, some 4.2% of our national population are direct beneficiaries of the shallow water fishery resources of Belize. The fisheries sector also continues to contribute significantly to the country's national economy. This sector is ranked fourth as a primary income earner and contributes 4% to the GDP of Belize. At the same time, the seas also depend on the coastal inhabitants of Belize for their responsible stewardship. The government of Belize, along with partners and users of our marine resources, have deployed a model and approach for sustainable small-scale fisheries, which has as its leitmotif innovation, partnerships, and the empowerment of fishers. The collaborations of community, institutions, scientists, the fishing and tourism industry, civil society are a point of pride for the social capital they create. Already, this model has set Belize well on its way to achieve its commitment under Sustainable Development Goal 14 to conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. Before introducing the main pillars of Belize's ecosystem-based approach for managing its fisheries, I wish to underscore that one of our main priorities in developing our approach has been to extensively and persistently involve fishers and community organizations in crafting fishing policy, and to use community-based co-management to empower stakeholders to implement those policies along with the government. In a moment, you will hear from a fisherwoman who is leading these efforts in her community. Belize has therefore created a model of fisheries management based on three pillars. First is the protection of critical habitat and life cycles. The government of Belize has established a coastal network of marine protected areas, including no-take or replenishment zones, multi-use marine reserves, and fish spawning aggregation reserves. In doing so, we are ensuring that fish species and the marine environment can withstand fishing pressure, and their resilience is strengthened to ensure their functionality and productivity. These sites are also highly valued for their recreational purposes, cultural significance, touristic importance, and job creation potential. I am pleased to announce that Belize is currently involved in an initiative to increase the percentage of no-take zones to 10% within the target date of the SDG 14-5. This, as you are aware, is another great commitment by the people of Belize. The second pillar is a national system of marine tenure and zoning, which we refer to as managed access. The managed access system is unique, a multi-species system of fishing rights that covers the entire territorial waters of Belize. Belize is the only country in the world to have achieved this type of system. Through managed access, fishing rights are allocated to all our traditional fishers and incentives provided for fishers to protect their fishing area. Finally, Belize is developing an international scientific partnership to use a data-limited approach for setting harvest controls on catch that will prevent and reverse overfishing. We are now employing this system for our conch fishery to ensure we are meeting our commitments to the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Belize will be an important proof point for science-based management of small-scale fisheries using local knowledge and limited but high-quality data for fisheries management decision-making. These are extensive obligations that Belize has undertaken, and we are fully committed to achieving them through partnerships with local fishers. There are 3,000 commercial fishers in Belize, and without a partnership with them, we lose the opportunity to empower them, to help implement and enforce those policies. We seek the collective impact of government, non-government organizations, and fishing associations and cooperatives working together as a mechanism for both effective implementation and strong social capital in communities. To cite a few examples, the Belize Fisheries Department and Belizean NGOs have shared co-management authority over our marine reserves and no-take zones, governed by management committees that include fishers. Given the department's limited resources, co-management has been critical in ensuring the effective management of our marine protected areas system. Our fishing rights program, Managed Access, is governed with community committees of traditional fishers who work with government on overseeing the allotment of licenses. And there is partnership between scientists, the fisheries department, and fisherman cooperatives on the collection of fisheries data and setting of catch limits for count. The Food and Agricultural Organization voluntary guidelines for small-scale fisheries provide us important guidelines for stakeholder participation, with particular attention to vulnerable and marginalized communities. Belize is committed to adopt and implement these guidelines in our fisheries sector. Belize's engagement with stakeholders begins with community consultations and then extends to implementation through innovative management structures and partnerships. Without these collaborations and a network of empowered, community-based organizations, Belize would not have achieved the milestone I am sharing with you today. Our work has only just begun. The steps Belize has taken provide a foundation to overcome the challenges we still face. We need to combat illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing and the encroachment into our marine protected areas by illegal fishers from neighboring countries, managing increasing pressure on resources without disenfranchising vulnerable populations, adapting to climate change, and putting in place effective monitoring and accountability. But we can see and grasp the possibility of Belize being a global model for sustainable development through fisheries management. An important output of this Ocean Conference is the voluntary commitment that member states of the United Nations have been encouraged to make. Belize takes this opportunity to state its voluntary commitments for achieving Sustainable Development Goal number 14. With the continued support of our existing and new collaborating partners, Belize is up to the task of meeting these challenges. Belize will improve its legal framework for the management of fisheries marine resources in Belize in consultation with stakeholders. Under this theme, we are voluntarily committing to do the following. A, to pass and implement by 2018 a modernized and comprehensive Fisheries Act. B, to develop and implement a national fisheries policy by 2018. C, to pass and implement an updated Coastal Zone Management Amendment Act and regulations by 2019, to develop and implement a national and a sub-regional, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras, that is, strategy and plan to effectively combat IUU fishing by 2019. 2. Belize will implement additional measures to improve the management and resiliency of fisheries and marine resources. To achieve this, we are voluntarily committing to do the following. A. To develop and implement fishery management plans for all major commercial species, including queen conch, spiny lobster, and finfish by 2018. B. Expanding no-take zones from 3% to 10% of territorial waters by 2020. Promote the adoption and implementation and implement the FAO voluntary guidelines for sustainable small-scale fisheries by 2018. Set sustainable catch limits for spiny lobster by 2019. Develop and implement the integrated coastal zone management plan as a planning tool by 2020. Develop and implement climate adaptation measures for the coastal zone by 2021. 3. Belize will ensure fisheries play a role in national development by empowering fisheries and communities and increasing economic benefits through the sustainable management of fisheries resources through the following. A. Diversify the fisheries sector to include new, under, and unutilized fishery resources and seek access to higher value markets by 2019. B. Develop new fisheries products, value-added products by 2020. C. Promote the adoption of a fisheries sustainability certification program, that is, for example, Fish Right, Eat Right by 2020. Develop policy and implement best practices for sustainable seaweed aquaculture by 2020. As a small developing country, Belize relies on the collaboration and external support from local and international partners for technical expertise, financial assistance, and models of success. Likewise, we invite the global community to share your experiences and to learn from Belize's expertise in developing a fisheries management regime that is setting us on a course for healthy ecosystems, more fish in the water, healthy food for our citizens, and secure livelihoods and communities. In closing, I want you all to imagine the possibilities and what more can be accomplished by building on what we have already started in Belize to achieve a single sustainable vision for our oceans. I invite you to approach Belize's Fisheries Administrator, Ms. Beverly Wade, and her cadre of technical experts to find out more details of our fisheries management and conservation work and to explore opportunities of collaboration and more partnerships. We would be glad to accommodate you. Finally, I wish to express our sincere gratitude to the United Nations Development Program, Environmental Defense Fund, the Nature Conservancy, Wildlife Conservation Society, the Toledo Institute for Development and Environment, the Southern Environmental Association, and our beloved small-scale artisanal fishers for making this event possible. I also wish to thank the Government of Canada for supporting the participation of representatives in the Ocean Conference. I thank you once again, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Figueroa. Thank you so much. The next person on our agenda is Ms. Paula Williams, and she is a representative of a Belize fishing community in Ponta Negra village in the southern part of Belize. So we'll hear from Ms. Paula Williams. Please, thank you.
Good afternoon, one and all. My name is Ms. Paula Williams, representing Belize. I am from Punta Negra. I am the chair lady. I am a fisherwoman. I cooked, and I can do as much as the men can do. I want to say welcome, and we are basically doing the, I am with the managed access, I am with Tide, a member of C, and we are located in PHMR, actually, Port and Grass Marine Reserve. We're in the center of it. As a fisherwoman, we work hard to we work alongside with Tide, Sea, Fisheries, and Managed Access, opened in 2011. And I am a member of them, and we do support everything that we work along with the fisher folks. I, as a member, work along with my community, and basically let them, in the sense that we get our license. Everybody should have a license for the protected area and for the fishing license, so that we can fish freely in Belize. Basically, as a member of Managed Access, Tide and Sea, and so we basically do exchange, and we go out to fish on different occasions. We do it seasonally in Belize, so that we can, and sustainable, so that we could have our fishing industry for a long, long time in Belize. I am a cook, and I do my coconut fudge, and actually we grew up in my small village. We do fishing from I would say from I was in the belly, I used to fish it. Literally, I could fish from I was like 1 year, 2 years and change. And that sustained us, and I actually went to high school sent by fishing. We used to do the net, now we changed over from the net to the line fishing. And here I am at the restaurant. We do exchanges from like the Philippines and different places come in, and I offer my food, different thing, and I have my menu, and you can just pass it around for me. You're always welcome to Montenegro Tavern, and you could have fresh coconut fudge and fresh fish. So I want to say thanks very much to Managed Access, and Tide, and Sea, and Fisheries. This will give us our 1 year implemented. Well, we're here for 5 years, but this is 1 year that we have implemented the national rollout of the Managed Access. And I want to say welcome. You're always welcome to Punta Negra, and you have your fresh seafood and coconut fudge.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paula. Well, this is a hard-working lady. She goes out on the boats and she fishes and she cooks for the restaurant. So let's give her another round of applause. She spoke without notes. That's very good. We have a panel, and I want to turn the discussion by the panel over to Ms. Beverly Wade, who's on the minister's right side. And she will moderate the panel and introduce the members of the panel. Thank you, Ms. Beverly.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome. I'd first like to thank Ambassador, Minister, and Ms. Paula for putting into context small-scale fisheries in Belize. As mentioned by the Minister, small-scale fisheries is very important to us, not only from a national economic standpoint, but also from a community and livelihood standpoint. And as highlighted in the Minister's speech, and also from Ms. Paula's presentation, it is really very much inclusive and partnership approach that we employ in Belize We're a small country. Fishing is something that we hold dearly to us, and we have been very successful in Belize through strategic and successful partnerships. So even though we have a dedicated staff in the institution that I work for, as you could appreciate, it takes a lot more than that for us to achieve sustainable small-scale fisheries in Belize. And so what we wanted to do this afternoon in this session was to now have a panel discussion with key partners who are on the ground with us in Belize. They come from both the international community and from our local community-based NGOs and from our fishers themselves to talk to us about the partnership, to talk about some of the key components that we believe are important to the model that we are now implementing in Belize. And so I would like to acknowledge the presence of those partners who are here with us today. And I'll start off with Ms. Julian Stockbridge, who is from the Nature Conservancy, and Mr. Carlos Ramirez, who is sitting right next to her, who is one of our very proud fishermen, as mentioned by the minister and by Ms. Paula, who is another one of our fisher folk. The fisher folk in Belize participate in fisheries management at every level. They are at the table, they're on the ground, they are there when we make management decisions, and they help us to formulate policy. And I'd also like to welcome Ms. Celia Mahon, who is the Executive Director of one of our community-based NGOs in Belize, who have been co-managing with the government of Belize in the Port Honduras Marine Reserve, and who are very close to what we do on the ground in Belize. And we will hear from her experience of the value of co-management in a small country like Belize, and the value of co-management in communities who depend on the resources that they're managing along with us. And we'll hear from Mrs. Nicole Awil Gomez from the Wildlife Conservation Society, who's been a long-standing partner with the government of Belize and with the people of Belize in sustainable fisheries management and in conservation. And finally, we'll hear from Mr. Larry Epstein from the Environmental Defense Fund, who has been working in Belize primarily with our Managed Access Program, and also looking at the application of science into our sustainable fisheries model. So I'd like you to welcome the panelists. And we'd like to start with a brief discussion, as I said before, with our partners about their perspective on Belize's ecosystems approach, community-based management, and collaboration with the fishers, application of science, markets and livelihoods, and innovation in monitoring and management. And then we'll have a session that we're hoping that gives you an opportunity to interact with us, and for us to have an opportunity to also hear from some of your experience as we all work to achieve sustainable small-scale fisheries in our various countries. Thank you very much. So we wanted to start off the discussions first, talking about co-management. Belize has a very long history of co-management. We have been co-managing with our fishers in particular for 40, 50 plus years, where fishers sit at the table, they advise the minister and the fisheries administrator on best practices, and they contribute to policy. But one of the aspects of co-management that have really bloomed over the last 15 years in Belize is the co-management with our community-based organization, where we, the government of Belize, along with these organizations, work very closely together in managing our protected areas, one, and also in managing and helping us to implement our various approaches on the ground in Belize. And so I just wanted to now call on Ms. Celia to talk to us about co-management in Belize, the value of co-management in Belize, and to talk to us about its value to community-based management, and also to tell us a little bit of the spatial management that they employ in the Port Honduras Marine Reserve.
Good afternoon. I've been introduced, but I'll still repeat my name. I'm Celia Mahong, and I'm the director of a local small NGO in southern Belize. And we do management of natural resources from ridge to reef. So despite the fact that I'll focus on our marine management of our marine park today, we do also management of terrestrial areas. We are a co-manager. I call, it's like, well, we're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. And so 20 years ago, fishers in particular were very concerned about illegal and transboundary fishing in our area. And of course, they wanted something to happen. They wanted to do something about it. There was no marine reserve at the time. And a few leaders of our community, along with fishers, advocated for the establishment of a marine reserve. It happened very quickly, 2 years after, and we were happy to sign a co-management agreement with the Fisheries Department for the management of the Port Honduras Marine Reserve. We knew that we couldn't do it alone. We needed that shared responsibility for the management of our natural resources, our marine resources. And we knew that we couldn't do policies on our own. I mean, we could recommend, we could do everything, but we need the government to support the initiatives. So that reserve was established. We have a co-management agreement, and that agreement involves day-to-day management. So we have the autonomy to do day-to-day management of the marine reserve. We do a management plan, we develop a management plan, and we don't do that on our own. We have several consultations with our stakeholders, with our with government officials, with the Fisheries Department. We try to have as many people involved in writing the management plan. That plan is approved by the Fisheries Department, and we implement that plan, again, in partnership with the Fisheries Department. Co-management also gives us an opportunity to fundraise to be able to implement that management plan, to meet our goals for the management plan. And perhaps I should say that even though there's a management plan for the marine reserve, it doesn't mean that fishers, because it's a marine reserve, that they cannot fish within the area. So people who want to fish commercially can fish in 95% of that marine reserve. Of course, we would like to increase it to, we'd like to increase our no-take zone. Right now it's only 5%, and there's need. Our science is showing that there's need for us to increase our no-take zones or our replenishment zones to at least 10, 15%. I heard the minister said 10%. Okay, so we want to increase so that there can be a spillover of more, and our communities can benefit from that. So the management plan does allow for fishers to use the marine reserve, and there's only a small percent of conservation zone. So we fundraise for the marine reserve, and we also monitor and evaluate the management plan. Government also has a responsibility, so they also offer training opportunities, we get tax exemptions, they recommend partnerships, they engage us as co-managers in national development, in fundraising at the national level too, and we get an opportunity to recommend policies. I think that it's an advantage for us to have co-management, because as I said earlier, we could not do everything alone. And we have an opportunity to engage the local community in our program as a co-manager. So in our resource protection, local communities are engaged. In our community development programs, we fundraise to ensure that there's supplemental livelihood opportunities, particularly for communities that buffer the marine reserve and other protected areas that we manage. They also are engaged in our environmental education. They benefit from our environmental education program that, you know, is I would say benefits over thousands of children and some adults. We also have youths that are engaged in monitoring and research, so they are trained to actually monitor, they help us with our monitoring program, and that data is used to inform the management of the reserve. So all in all, NGOs that have co-management agreements do assist the government with finances for the management of our protected areas, and that's a huge help.
Thank you, Celia. Two key things I just wanted to highlight it was the fact that our co-management with our community-based organizations allow us as the government and the regulatory agency to have a direct link to our stakeholders. Their organization, their board, is made up of representatives from the buffer communities of the area that they are currently co-managing along with the government of Belize. And secondly, they work very closely with us that all the national policies and programs that are then implemented in Belize are implemented through partnerships like that we have with TIE on the ground. And so for small institutions like the Belize Fisheries Department, it is a tremendous network that we have with our co-management partners and that we draw on to successfully implement our fisheries management regime and policies. Thank you, Celia. So, as mentioned earlier, we've been co-managing with our primary stakeholders, the fishers, since the beginning of time, really. And it has really been a plus for us in Belize. Our fishers in Belize are well organized. They're very much organized in associations. They're very much organized in producing cooperatives that markets and exports all of the production that they do produce in Belize. And so for some time, we have really benefited from the fact that we have organized groups of fishers, stakeholders, users of the resource that we can bring to the table, we can dialogue with, and we could also employ them as an extension, really, of our staff on the ground to help us implement our fisheries management measures. And so I just wanted to now call on Mr. Carlos, who is one of our fishermen. He's also from the south, but he's one of the fishermen who has been very instrumental with us with the Managed Access Program, which is really a formal structure and framework for fishers to access the resources and needs. And I would want him now to talk to us a little bit about the role that fishers play and the role that fishing associations and the cooperatives play in fisheries management in Belize.
So, good afternoon. We mentioned earlier, my name is Carlos Ramirez. I'm a fisherman from the southern part of the country of Belize. I grew up actually within the Port and Western Reserve on the island. I spent all my life there. I actually went to school with Paula. She's my classmate. Yeah, and also my granddad, my mom, my dad, they grew up in a fishing family as well. So it's been over like 30 years since I'm a fisherman. It's a good thing that Mr. mentioned, we work closely with the fisheries department. I had the opportunity to also work with Ms. Celia as a ranger and with Julie. Yeah, I was a fisherman before, then I went to do ranger job, then I went back to fishing. Like she said earlier, that we play a role with making decisions, that we talk about the managed access. we, when we were younger, we decided to say, all right, we'll see when, like you mentioned earlier, that we were supposed to go out fishing at the time. Then we decided to say, all right, you know what, we need to put some structure in place so we can have our resources for much longer. So that's when the mine access come in place. When the reserve first, then eventually the mine access put the icing on the cake, right? Because at the time when we had the reserve, yes, it was good. We had conservation zone or no dig zones, but we still have folks that will come in and still exploit the resources. Then when mine access come in place, we noticed that, okay, there's just the grassroots fishers that will actually benefit from the reserve. Actually, that's where I grew up, right? On that little island there. I spent all my life there. That's another reserve, actually. We just made a little video, not knowing that I was coming here, actually, you know, just a coincidence, right? So, yeah, but we do play a big role in decision making within the reserve. Like Mr. Willie mentioned, they do a lot of consultation with us whenever they want to do something that will benefit the reserve. Yes, you will not get all the fishers involved, but you will get some that, you know, it's time to make a stop to what is happening, and so we can improve our fisheries within our area. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Try my best to answer.
Thank you, Carlos. So, as Minister mentioned in his presentation, fisheries continues to contribute significantly to our national economy. And as you've heard from the fishermen, it is a very important activity for livelihoods in Belize. And one of the things that we looked at when we were looking at strengthening our approach to our small-scale fisheries in Belize was looking at the whole aspect of adding value to that product that we were now trying to manage and trying to extract from our waters in Belize. In the past, Belize has its primary commodities is lobster and conch, and in the past, we simply were just exporting raw products, high quality raw products. And so when we were now looking at a more tighter regime and to put more structure in place, we realized that there was a need for us to now look at our supply chain, our market chain, to look at where we could make meaningful interventions to ensure that we were adding value, to ensure that we were looking at bringing in more income for the fishers that we were asking so much from. We've now put in frameworks to now restrict how they traditionally access the resources in Belize. And we were asking them to now change their approach to accessing the fisheries resources. And one of the partners that we've been working with very closely in Belize is the Nature Conservancy, who is now looking at improving our fisheries management framework through diversification of markets, creating market-based incentives for fishers to implement more sustainable practices in Belize. And so I now ask Ms. Stockbridge from the Nature Conservancy to talk to us a little bit about the ways in which Belize is leveraging financing, marketing, livelihoods diversification, and supply chains to positively reinforce good fisheries management.
Good afternoon. As Ms. Wade mentioned, our fisheries is primarily made up of conch and lobster. In fact, that makes up about an estimate of 75 to 80% of our fisheries is just those two species. As you can imagine, with threats like climate change and increasing fishing pressure, it is time for us to start looking at how we can diversify from those markets, as well as diversify livelihoods and work with the fishers in in entering into new industries and creating new industries, as well as increasing the value of the existing conch and lobster industry. So, first of all, one of the things that we're doing is we're working with the cooperatives, and they have been investing and actually leveraging funds in transforming the lobster fishery from what was primarily tailed lobster to whole lobster. What that does is that actually increases the value of that species. Ounce per ounce, a whole lobster is worth 3 times as much as a lobster tail. So what you have now is you have a fisher that's going out and bringing back either the same quantity or even less quantity, but with greater value. So there is an incentive there. And the other important aspect to actually transforming into the whole lobster industry is that the way in which they catch that whole lobster is a more sustainable way of catching lobster. It ensures that the lobster that they're bringing in, which has to be landed live, is of legal size. It is not a female carrying eggs. So it's doing several things. It's incentivizing the fishers to fish more sustainably, and it's bringing more money into their pockets at the end of the day. So that's one of the things that we're working on. And we're promoting this and helping to reach premium markets, better markets, so that they can actually, again, incentivizing them, letting them get a higher premium at the end of the day. So one of the things that we're doing in order to achieve that is to start looking at things like electronic seafood traceability, so that we're now able to improve the efficiency within the cooperatives themselves, reduce waste, combat seafood fraud, and also provide data, very valuable data, to the fisheries department, so that they're able to manage the fisheries in real time and help to make these help with decision making for both policy and legislation. And we're also working with the communities and with fishers, building the capacity. There are many fishers out there who want to stay on the water. They want to keep fishing. That is what they know. It is what they love. But there's some that also want to diversify. So one of the things that we're looking into right now is aquaculture, in particular seaweed aquaculture. In farming seaweed, one of the things that we are discovering now is that the farms themselves not only provide an income, or supplemental income to the fishers, but it can also restore and protect habitat. Wherever these seaweed farms are placed, these are areas that are actually close to fishing. So under the agreement with the fisheries department right now, wherever there are seaweed farms, no one can fish or harvest anything other than the seaweed themselves. The other thing that we are seeing is that these are areas that protect nursery ground for juvenile conch. It's providing a habitat for spiny lobster, and is promoting gender equity by providing jobs to women from coastal fishing communities. So we are just piloting this right now in several sites in Belize, in the hopes that we could actually create an entirely new industry for the country. One that is based on sound design, sustainable standards, and perhaps eventually gaining certification. Pulling all these things together is what we're essentially doing is we're creating incentives for fishers to do the right thing. We are creating tools for them to remain on the water, still fish, but also get involved in other activities that can also restore fisheries as well. Thank you.
As mentioned also by Minister earlier, Belize has taken a pretty much integrated approach to its fisheries management and conservation. And it has really now taken on a more spatial approach to the management of its marine and fisheries waters. Indeed, as a matter of fact, it's one of the first countries that has now successfully rolled out a turf system for access by its small-scale fishermen across its entire coastal areas. That's a big thing for us. And so what it entailed was for us to ensure that we had good science that was now informing that process, and science that can also continue to strengthen what we have on the ground in Belize, and for the implementation of a more adaptive management approach to our fisheries management in Belize. One of our partners that have been working very closely with us has been the Environmental Defense Fund, who is primarily helping us to ensure that our decisions are science-based and that our policy decisions benefit from good science. This is important to us. We're a small country. We have very limited resources, and it's important for us to have a system that gives us the information that we need to ensure that our management decisions continue to be adequate and robust. So I'd like to ask Larry Epstein from the EDF to talk to us a bit more on how both Belizean and international scientists are collaborating to innovate new approaches to fisheries management.
Thank you. And I can't emphasize more what Ms. Ray just mentioned about the importance of science in contributing to policy-making decisions. I think one of the real reasons for that is because for a country like Belize, which, as has been mentioned, is small, is resource constrained, and has populations that are vulnerable. I've read, that some 30 to 40% of fishermen fall within the poverty line. Can't really afford to make mistakes in implementing these changes, which are significant, whether it's the 10-year program, the implementation of marine reserves, supply chain reconfigurations. They come with risks, and one way to hedge against those risks is with good science, so that the ramifications of those decisions can be understood. One of the things that I really find exciting about Belize is that these concepts that we've talked about earlier, such as the ecosystems approach and partnerships, really come to life when science is applied. And I'll just make kind of three broad points. One is that when Belize is talking about applying science, it's really multidisciplinary. To really enact that ecosystems approach, it really cuts across a lot of different ways science can be conducted. There's biological and ecological analysis, which really tries to provide a snapshot of the status of the resource, the status of habitat, the status of that magnificent barrier reef. So decisions can be made about whether or not changes are necessary in how the resource is managed. But attached to that is bioeconomic analysis, and Belize has been creating a really robust and innovative model of bioeconomic analysis, so that decisions, whether it's setting catch limits for lobster, as the minister mentioned before, increasing your take zones to the 10% commitment. So those decisions can be analyzed against what is not only the ecological response that can be anticipated, but what is the economic response? What does that mean for the livelihoods of fishermen, for the livelihoods of communities? And those models are coming into play as Belize takes these decisions one at a time. Julianne already talked about supply chain and value chain analysis. And as she was talking about how one of the national cooperatives is reconfiguring its business from lobster tails to whole lobster, it's important to note that a lot of time and investment went into analyzing what is the upside of that, what is the cost of doing that, how does that affect the individual fisherman who might not be quite prepared to make that change, and what is the investment he or she has to make in order to start harvesting whole lobster instead of lobster tail. And I think extremely important, but sometimes overlooked, is the sociological research. These communities are heavily dependent on fishing for their stability, for a healthy source of clean protein. And really doing a deep dive into what are the implications for each of these communities as these changes happen is really key. Just for example, one of the pieces of work that Belize is implementing, has been implementing, and continues to refresh is analyzing the role of women in the fisheries sector. Women play a huge role in processing of product, in fishing, in pre and post-harvest activities. So it's really critical to understand the role, the value that is added, and thank you, and consider that in taking decisions. Wildlife Conservation Society, was going to speak in a moment, did a study on that a couple of years ago, which is being refreshed. So the breadth of science is pretty extensive. I'd also like to say, kind of paradoxically, the simplicity of it is important as well. This can sound intimidating because it's extensive, but one of the things that Belize has been really modeling is how do you do this type of work in data-limited and data-constrained circumstances. This is the second point. The minister mentioned some of the regime that's being put in place for the management of conch. And that's a really exciting piece of work because conch is critically important. Julie mentioned that it's a huge piece of the economic picture for fisheries. It's also listed under CITES. And that system, which is being implemented for adaptive management of conch, really relies on 3 key indicators. So it isn't all that 3 key important indicators that, of course, have to be collected correctly, processed and analyzed correctly, but it's not an extensive array of data that's necessary to take these decisions. One of the things I'll highlight is that some of this work has been recognized internationally. The Monterey Bay Aquarium last year improved the rating for Belize's conch up to good alternative, which is really key when talking about such a critical export industry. And the final point I'll make is just to reiterate the overall theme of this discussion, which is partnerships. None of this happened alone. Everybody who's sitting at this table, many of the people who are kind of in the audience, have played a key role in executing on this science in Belize. When we implemented that managed access program, there were at least a dozen organizations, including fishermen, government, NGOs, University of Belize, universities from the United States, who participated in years-long analysis of what is the right design for that program, what are the implications of different designs before it was rolled out. And it was rolled out in phases. You know, there was 2 pilot projects, Fort Honduras Marine Reserve and Glover's Reef Marine Reserve, which were implemented first. And those were extensively studied to understand what went right and what needs to be changed before there was a national rollout. So it was really critical that that science was done. And key to that, and again, sometimes overlooked, is the important and I think indispensable role that fishermen have played in science, that the fishers have played in generating data. Right now, under the Managed Access Program, fishers are collecting 100% of their catch data and submitting it, which is a critical piece of information to understand the status of the resource, the status of livelihoods, and what changes need to be made throughout the season as that resource is harvested. So it's a really key point that it's not just the university, PhDs, the NGOs who are executing on this. Much of the data is coming in through the fishers themselves, who really found the incentive to collect that because of the implication it has for the longevity of the resource. And finally, I just like to wrap up and mention that the minister has mentioned some really ambitious targets for the voluntary commitments. We're excited to work with Belize on seeing those through. And that this science infrastructure, which is created, is adaptable. The institutions that are working together on stock assessments, on setting catch limits, on expanding marine reserves, it's a collaboration that is scalable and adaptable to these other challenges that Belize is facing as it tries to achieve those voluntary commitments over the next few years. So thank you.
Thank you. Finally, and that by far the least, we'd like to invite Ms. Nicole Will to talk to us a little bit more of some of the innovations that we have now introduced in Belize in terms of governance and technology when we look at how do we ensure compliance at the end of the day. So we've elaborated a beautiful framework. But at the end of the day, if we don't have good systems in place to ensure compliance, then none of these various parts of this bigger picture will really be successful. And so while a big part of what we do in Belize encourages voluntary compliance and a sense of co-responsibility with our primary users, one of the things that we do have to address in Belize is the whole issue of illegal fishing and unreported fishing. And so WCS, who has been one of the long-standing partners working with us in Belize, has been now working very closely with us, as I said before, on innovations and technology and to how to make monitoring and compliance more effective in Belize. Nicole?
Good evening, and thank you very much, Ms. Lane. To put it all into perspective as to how do we move forward with making sure that the management initiatives that have taken years of work by many organizations, many individuals, and a lot of them not here today. So we're just a few who were able to come. How do we work together? We've been doing the pilot opportunities at sites within the Marine Protected Area system in Belize. And we have several systems in place that ensure transparent, fair, and accountable access to fisheries resources for the country. And it starts with our licensing system. There's a formal process of application approved by Government of Belize. And of late, we've been talking about managed access system. That system now allows for participatory engagement by the fishermen and women from the communities that have access to the resource. So Mr. Carlos, Ms. Paula sit on a committee and decide whether or not Joe Smith will be able to get a license and make that recommendation to the Fisheries Department. The new system, the licensing system, is now completely automated, it's completely digitized, and we now even have a QR code system on the cards themselves. And that will link to every piece of information technology that I'll be discussing. So today we have 2,200 fishermen licensed from 115 communities, and they use 623 vessels across our country. This supports 4,725 immediate dependents. To ensure compliance of the fishing regulations, once a license has been issued, we have the government, the Fisheries Department staff, the Conservation Compliance Unit, as well as co-management compliance units working together within and outside of the Marine Protected Area system, using several technologies, including the spatial monitoring and reporting tool, or SMART. And SMART is a tool that was developed by a number of organizations, from the Frankfurt Zoological Society, Global Wildlife Conservation, North Carolina Zoo, Peace Parks Foundation, WWF, and CLS. And this system is a completely automated system, and everything now is going digital. People up in the room have your computers, your telephones, and everything now is completely digital. It is a customizable system that allows the user, which would be the ranger or enforcer, to record where they're going, when they're going, the interactions they have with people on the water, whether they're fishermen and women, or whether they're tour guides, and record the activities going on within and outside of protected areas. And they also record wildlife sightings, whether it's like marine mammals or specific birds that they may be looking for, depending on the objectives of the team. This system allows the SMART system links to the license, because the SMART system can then scan the license for each fisherman, and the data is inputted. And that is automatically uploaded real time using the new Smart Connect system, which is done with internet. So the fisheries department gets immediate information from their staff in the field as to where they're going, what resources they're using, and what management decisions they're making on the water. We also are going to be, it was mentioned of using logbooks, that the fishermen and women are now providing information as to what their catches are, and these can be verified. We're going to be moving into a vessel monitoring system for the entire fleet of small-scale fishing in Belize. Excuse me. And this, as Minister mentioned, with the cooperative discussions with Honduras and Guatemala, looking at a larger picture, we are actually developing this technology to be affordable for both Belize and Honduras currently. And this is going to be used not only to monitor the fishermen and women's movements on the water to say, well, you don't need to expend resources, and these groups or these targets, they are conforming with the laws. We would redirect limited resources to these specific targets that we are unable to monitor. So we're hoping to do the entire small-scale fleet in Honduras and in Belize as a complementary activity. Excuse me. We're also going to be introducing the Our Fish app, which is looking at the buyer's end. So a buyer, so a restaurant would find a fisherman and purchase fish, and from the license, take the information from that QR code as to what that fish product was bought. So we have user systems for the enforcers, we have user systems for fish buyers, and as Julianne mentioned, looking at traceability, our long-term objective is really to be able to identify the point of where a specific fish was caught within the managed access zones of Belize, to where it is brought in landed, to where it is exported. So one day you'll find a fish and you'll know, oh, this fish was captured in zone 2. And zone 2 is this area. We know that we have strong management within this area because the co-manager tie or equivalent is there. You can look them up and understand what they're doing on the ground, and you can put all the pieces together. So the information comes in for the individual fishers, the information comes in as people on the water, information comes in as to where boats are going, and information will be coming in as to fish purchased and exported. I'll let my wrap up. So that's it. Thank you.
I want to thank you for hearing a snapshot from our approach to assistance-based management in fisheries in Belize, where we highlighted some key areas, and I'll just remind you of them. The first one is the importance of co-management in small-scale fisheries and in Belize. The second one has to do with ensuring that the management regime is informed by good science, and science that works for small-scale fisheries and small country like Belize. Thirdly, the importance of ensuring that you create incentives for the fishing sector, for the fisher folk who are now being asked to participate in a new regime, in new approaches to ensure sustainability at the end of the day, to ensure that your fisheries isn't necessarily just driven by production, but it's also driven by value adding and more lucrative markets. And finally, to talk about the importance of looking at innovation in monitoring in order to get the proper information that you need to inform your management measures, but also ensure compliance with your fisheries regulation. Thank you very much for your attention. And we have about 15 minutes if there are any interventions from the floor. You could direct them to any of the speakers, or even to myself, the minister, if there are anything that you want some further information.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laverne Walker. I'm from the UNDP Caribbean Large Marine Ecosystem Project. It's a regional project that works with all the countries that border the Caribbean Sea, and Belize is one of the countries. My intervention is actually to Ms. Gomez. I actually was very curious to hear about the work that you all are doing with regard to trying to alleviate IUU fishing and the technologies that you all have in place. Also about your idea to work with the neighboring countries of Honduras and, was it Honduras and Nicaragua? Honduras. Oh, just Honduras. Okay. So I was actually curious as to how y'all were going about this, whether y'all were going to be working with the government, whether y'all be working through OSPESCA, what was the approach that you would be taking? Just curious. Because it may also have some implications to work, that we were also doing as part of our project with the Central American countries, for specifically lobster fisheries.
Thank you very much for your question. Actually, this the particular project that is looking at the vessel monitoring system. So the initiatives I mentioned related to the licensing, the vessel monitoring, and the Our Fish app. This is a project that's funded by Oceans 5, and it's implemented by the Smithsonian Institution, and WCS is the agent implementing it in Belize, and the Center for Marine Studies is implementing it in Honduras. So we are only implementing in our home countries, but we're looking at the technology to be similar. And so for Belize, and it's also being done in Honduras, STEM is an NGO, and they work with their government to implement these. WCS is an NGO, and we work with our government, so the Fisheries Department. And the intention is to move forward and move it up on a regional scale through OSPESCA, and that's where the government entities would then come together. We also actually have a Department of State project that looks at the same, that is more of a smart rollout, so looking at the technology and expansion of the technology, and that is being done in Panama, Honduras again, and the Bahamas and Belize. And we're working with CRFM, I'm not sure if he's still there. And so those, again, is through the governments. So that engagement is through governments and different sectors of the government. So it would be the fisheries, the Coast Guard, the military, depending on the country. So for Belize, we have, so I would probably just refer to government to follow up on something like that.
Yeah, basically it is a national program that's looking at having a more efficient system in place to monitor the activities of fishing within our country. And so it's a bilateral initiative for now with Honduras, which is one of the countries that we work closely with and have more interactions with. And so both governments from both countries and our partners highlighted this as a priority for us to ensure that we could have better management of our small-scale fisheries.
I didn't mention it, if I would take a second, the vessel monitoring system in particular is not just about monitoring where the fishermen go, it's also for safety purposes. Because the system, well, we have not agreed on a system because the preliminary stage of researching different options, that's where we're at, and the intention is also for safety. We've had incidences of, I'm sure in other countries, where it's very dangerous for a fishing boat to be out at sea. There are cases of illegal terrorist activities that happen out at sea. So we're looking at the safety aspect as well for the fishers, and this can be something that other types of entities, maybe tourism industries, can then deploy for their sector. So this technology, for Belize as well, it can be an example of what can be done at a larger scale, because we're only really going to be starting with about 600 vessels. But the tourism industry is another large-scale industry with a lot of vessels on the water.
Yes, thank you. I'm Chris Darby from the Seabass Fisheries Laboratory in the UK, and Fisheries Advisor. And thank you for the presentation. This is a really nice piece of work that contributors really have enjoyed. It shows shows how an integrated system across all of the various stakeholders, government, right the way down to fisheries and back up again, can actually work and bring this sort of thing into, as you said, an ecosystem-based management facility and things like that. I have a question related to that, sorry. The issue that I was going to bring up was something that I didn't think you emphasised was communication. Because I think that is sort of part of the management process that I've come across in my experience, whereby a lot of the stakeholders within the process are just at different ends of the spectrum and all want to get to the same place, but they all want to go at different roads. And that communication system that you've developed has integrated it and brought everybody together in that way. The question I had was, when you talk about the economic analysis, is the science process and the management process costed into that?
Yeah. So the quick answer is yes. And the initial cost-benefit analysis we did, the cost of management, the cost of operations is definitely costed into it. So when we look at kind of the economic upside, I guess there's two ways of coming at it. One is from the perspective of the fisher who's kind of out on the water, and he or she has their costs and their benefits. And then there's the cost of the overall system, which is cost to government, cost to donors who might be supporting it, cost to other partners, and that's built into the system as well.
Or will there always be an investment into that, which is necessary to have this level of management, this level of system-based work?
It'll have to be both, a combination of both. One of the things that we've experienced in implementing we call it our model in Belize, is that we'll always have, we're still at the point where as we build on various platforms that we establish, there's always a component that we have to invest in at the end of the day. But through our systems now that we're putting in place, it's expected that we would move more towards a more long-term sustainability program that will help sustain the systems that are already in place. So that's a big part of it, to look at the long-term sustainability of the various systems that are there.
There's kind of two specific examples which I think are exciting to highlight. So one is, we mentioned before, is kind of the fishermen collecting their own data, and the cooperatives providing that data. That's private enterprise performing that function and essentially financing it themselves in terms of their people and their time. And the second, what Julie was talking about earlier, the co-op that's transitioning from tails to whole lobster. A lot of that happened through a loan that they got to their local bank, private debt capital, which kind of validates one of the kind of core assumptions, which I know is spoken a lot about, which is that sustainable fisheries are more investable. So it's shifting away from a model that's solely dependent on tax funding and donor funding, both of which are still incredibly important and would not survive without those support, to other streams of financing which are starting to enter into the system.
Thanks. I'm representing CARICOM Secretariat. I have a question/suggestion. I just wanted to know if you all have made any attempt to document this exercise, because I'll tell you why. You're touching on several issues that are critical concerns of CARICOM SITS, and I guess SITS in general. One is the whole issue of the transboundary nature of managing marine resources, which can often be problematic for us. And the other one is this environment, fisheries sort of, clash that shouldn't actually be a clash, especially when you're in a small island setting. We have to share small spaces and everyone has to have a good quality of life. So I think it's critical that that you've presented this afternoon be put into a format where it can be shared as a best case or a best case example, or to share with other member states. And I think that's critical that you will do that.
Thank you.
Amen.
Hi, I'm Christophe Trinquet from University Côte d'Azur, and we are developing a program in management of environmental resources. And I've been particularly interested by your seaweed aquaculture stock fishes, and especially on the, let's say, life cycle of this product. So I would like to know if it's only for human food or for other purposes.
So there's several species. There's two primary species of seaweed that we're currently working with. One is Euchema and the other one is Gracilaria. Locally, the seaweed that is farmed is used for a drink. So it's consumed locally. It has a very high value of US $50 per pound on the local market. On the international market, it has a much lower value. So one of the things that we're looking at is how do we create value-added products. The Gracilaria species is also used in the cosmetics industry. So we are working with an investor to actually create a line of cosmetics and facial products that will be actually will be produced in Belize for export to the Asian market. And we'll also be looking at a number of different species to see all local species. It's all species that are naturally occurring within the region.
Great. So again, I'd like to thank you for participating in our interactive session. I know we would have wanted more time to talk some more, but as Mr. mentioned, we are here to collaborate, to share, and please contact us. I'd like to now ask Ambassador Young to just give the thank you and the closing on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you everyone who's participating. And I wanted to ask a question, but I didn't know if I could ask. I wanted to ask Ms. Paula if she goes out fishing for how many hours and then comes back and cooks after that. She says yes, she does.
Sometimes I go fishing in the morning at 5 o'clock, and I am back by 9 o'clock, and sometimes I go 9 for 12 o'clock.
5 o'clock, okay. So she goes 5, comes back 9, and cooking 9 for 12 o'clock lunch. Thank you very much. The second thing I wanted to say is that this idea of this seaweed, that this has been like for the last 20 odd years in my head because it's such a marvelous product. I don't want anyone to steal the idea. It's a great product. It's for your skin, it's for when you eat it, it's for everything. So I would love for that to be something that we can do. I don't know, it's great. So thanks for that question. The third thing I want to say is that 2006, I see the linkages. It's obvious that we take care of our fishers. And you can see that, right? We have 2,600 fishers, and as Ms. O'Neill said, I know her as Ms. O'Neill, we were from a child. 2,600 fishers, and that they feed their families. So you're talking like, what, 4,000, did you say? And odd people eating off of that, so that's important.
That's direct. Indirect is 15,000.
All right, indirect 15,000. So it pays, as you can see, to take care of your small fishers and to pet them up. I will say at home, pet them up and take care of them. The second thing I want to say is that it's great to have the SMART tool. That's such a great innovation linked to the licenses. And the third thing I want to say is that I hope that the monitoring of the vessels comes on board and our fish app. So I think you all have our game plan for Belize. Run with it. Thank you very much for being here.
How are you? Yeah, it's a live feed.